Sweden is Eurovision's biggest powerhouse, and with 3 wins in a decade and 7 top 5 finishes, I don't think that's a particularly controversial statement. Maths fans among you might know that 7 out of 10 is a pretty good number of times for coming top 5 in Eurovision in the last decade. We are witnessing one of the best runs in the history of Eurovision. So I want to take a deep dive onto how it happened, because it wasn't by accident. So we're going to go through and we're going to look at it ourselves. We are at the point where it is essentially assumed that Sweden is going to come top 5, top 10, every single year. But this is a pretty new phenomenon, and I think we need to go and look at where it started, and that year is 2010. Before we start, I just want to say a couple of things. Firstly, normal stuff, like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, etc, etc. You know the drill. One more thing, we have just launched the Patreon. The link is in the description. If you're able to sign up, obviously it's hugely appreciated. You'll get the videos a day early in future, and you will get mentioned at the end of the video. You'll get thanked on screen. You'll get to see your name in the video. Isn't that exciting? Okay, now the self-promotion is done. Let's talk about what happened to Sweden in 2010. In 2010, Sweden had their only non-qualification in Eurovision history. Anna Bergendahl lost out by 5 points to a man called Charalambos and his friends from Wales. By the way, the moment that Sweden didn't qualify, the moment Anna Bergendahl found out, is on YouTube, and it was uploaded by Norway's own broadcaster. Like, come on, guys, that feels a bit cruel. She was literally 18, and it's there under the video, "Sweden out, Anna Bergendahl in tears." Like, come on, guys, just a bit much. I think the thing people are missing about 2010 is that this had kind of been coming for a while. Sweden in the previous 3 years had 2 18th placed finishes and a 21st place finish. The results were not that strong, and in one of those years, 2008, they'd only qualified for the final because the juries got to pick a qualifier that otherwise wouldn't have qualified at all. In any case, 2010 was the year it actually happened, and Sweden took that personally. Like, really, they took it really, really personally. For Melodifestivalen the following year, that's Sweden's national selection, the table was totally flipped. A whole bunch of rule changes were made, and it was a big risk, but boy did it pay off. Juries representing each region of Sweden were scrapped completely. They were replaced by international juries, which had a say before, but had never represented 50% of the vote. Now they did. SVT, Sweden's broadcaster, took a much more active role in selecting the songs, when previously they had mostly left it to a separate selection panel. They also changed the way the televote worked. Before, it was this kind of weird system where you got a fixed number of points based on what place you finished in the televote, kind of what Benidorm Fest has now, if you've seen that. But now it became directly proportional to how many votes you received. So if you received 73% of the televotes, you'd get 73% of the televote points. Melodifestivalen has changes regularly. This isn't something that's unusual. There's minor tweaks every year, every 2 years, that kind of thing. But this was a lot of changes all at once, and that's why I'm highlighting it. The risk paid off immediately, because the very next year, Erik Saade finished 3rd in Baku with his song. What I always remember about this song is just the fact that some of the rhyming in it is absolutely terrible. Like, I'm sorry, who thought it was a good idea to rhyme with possible? Like, come on, it's just, you can do better than that. And then there was way and day. It's like, I'm just saying, it's not the most creative thing in the world. Anyway, point is, came 3rd, did really well. It's a banger. A lot of Eurovision fans still think that it probably deserved to win that year. Following that in 2012 came an artist and song that need no introduction. Loreen and Euphoria blew away the competition in 2012. There is no other word for it. And in retrospect, thank God she did, because if she didn't, then those grannies would have been taking us back to Russia again. I'm going to talk plenty about Loreen's impact in this video, but that deserves a section all to itself. So let's put a bookmark in this and come back to it later. Let's move on with the rest of the songs for now. 2013 brought a generic middle-of-the-road pop song by a man called Robin that was way more popular with the juries than the public. This may become a theme. To be honest, there's not that much to talk about here, but 14th, given the fact that host entries generally don't do very well, is actually a pretty good result, so kudos to Robin Stjernberg for that. 2014 gave us another example of lyrical excellence with the line, "Undo my sad, undo what hurts so bad." And Europe loved it. It came 3rd, it did well. It's like a sort of power ballad sort of thing. I was never a fan of it in 2014, but to be honest, when I went back and listened to it for this video, I actually quite enjoyed it. They followed that up in 2015 with yet another win, and this time it was Heroes, Måns Zelmerlöw, obviously we all know this song. I think it gets a bit of a bad rep among Eurovision fans. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I think Eurovision fans see it as quite a generic song, and I think also some people are a bit sick of seeing Mons at every single Eurovision. He finds a way into every single year. Me, I kind of quite like it. It's not the best winner ever, but it did some interesting things in terms of staging. I think the other factor that people maybe don't like so much is that this was a song that the juries massively boosted over the public. The public chose another winner by a big margin in 2015, and that was Grand Amore by Il Volo. This is maybe foreshadowing. We'll come back to this later. But to be honest, I don't really think I can talk about taste in 2015 because my favorite in 2015 was Moldova. Okay, provided my favourite from 2015 hasn't upset you too much, let's talk about 2016. Of course, Sweden hosted again this year, and the song was If I Were Sorry by France. Now, the one thing to note about this song is that it was actually more popular with the public than the juries, which is a bit unusual for Sweden in this period. Put a pin in that, we're going to come back to it later. Now, the thing is that this started a run of generic pop ballads by generic men, so let's just get through them quickly. In 2017, we got a generic pop song sung by a generic man called Robin. No, not that Robin, the other one, that the juries massively preferred to the public. In 2018, we got a generic pop song sung by a generic man that the juries massively preferred to the public. Seriously, the cheers when the televote result was announced for this song says everything you need to know.
With 21 points, Sweden.
2019 brought us a generic pop song by a generic man that was massively preferred by the juries to the public. I mean, at least this one gave us that split screen at the end. Let's just remind ourselves how that went.
93 points, that means that
in 2020, Sweden remembered that women also exist and selected the Mamas. Then the universe intervened and they never got to go to the contests. 2021 brought yet another man singing yet another generic pop song, but the juries actually didn't like this one as much as the public did. Now, 2022 is the exception that proves the rule. I'll admit that this is kind of anecdotal, but the atmosphere around Cornelia Jacobs among fans felt really different. I think there was a real sense that she had sent a song that felt so real and so authentic in a way that a lot of the songs before hadn't really felt. You could tell that it was her song, that it was her own emotions that she was putting through it. It didn't feel manufactured and synthetic like a few of Sweden's previous entries did. This is the Swedish entry that I think I look back on the most fondly out of the entire last 15 years, because this was the year it felt like Sweden had taken a little step away. It had done something that was a little bit more unsafe. Unfortunately, it still did way better with the juries than the public, but it did really well with both. We're going to stop there because, like I said, Loreen gets her own section, so we are going to come back to her later. Other than the incredible consistency on the scoreboard, the one thing that this run really shows is a lack of diversity among Sweden's entries, not just among the genres that they are, but also the songwriters and the teams involved behind the scenes as well. But don't take it from me, I found a real-life Swedish person to tell you instead.
Hello, it's me. I'm the real-life Swedish person. I've grown up watching Melodifestivalen since I was a wee little girl. When I was growing up with Melodifestivalen, it was such a good show. Like, honestly, and I'm not saying this because I'm biased. When it comes to the acts, the diversity, I might say, I feel like even song-wise, we fell off there, definitely. It's not really we lost the plot, but we had one plot and we just kept going with it. Honestly, like we saw that something worked and then we just kept going and we just kept doing the same thing over and over again. And the thing is, like, we keep getting rewarded for it. This is the thing with Melodifestivalen, is they rotate between like how many different songwriters? I'd say 4. It's become especially bad these past few, like 3 years. It's actually ridiculous. They even made a joke about it last year in the show. It's funny, but it's not haha funny. It's like, it's funny, but just because you're aware of it doesn't make it okay, because at the end of the day, Melodifestivalen is the contest for the songwriters themselves. Like Thomas Gesson, my mortal enemy, but also not, because he writes good songs, but he has written like 69 songs. This man has 69 entries in his Wikipedia page. Like, that's insane. Linnea Deb has 29. Jimmy Joker has 17 entries. Okay, but he's had 17 since 2021. Like, are we being for real right now? Like 17 since 2021, that's insane. Are we not seeing the issue here? The songs are sounding the same and the people are noticing. The quality is just not there. It's rooted in the fact that there's not enough diversity when it comes to songwriters themselves. I think the ones that have like Jimmy Joker, Thomas Gesson, the songs that do have them tend to get like more well-known artists, and they also tend to get higher production value. There's the same songwriters that write. Then obviously we're not gonna get diversity. We're not gonna get like different shit. We're gonna get the same things every year. And the people do actually favor the unique songs, the songs that are written by the artists themselves. Like Cornelia, she wrote the song herself and it was very obvious. People do favor the unique songs. I just think they don't get pushed forward. I could honestly go on for ages, and I don't think I even scratched the surface. But yeah, that's it for me. Let's go back to Gabe. Thank you, Gabe, for having me on.
Okay, pause this video, go subscribe to Selma's channel, then come back and we'll continue. So we've established that there's a lack of diversity among the genres of the songs at Melodifestivalen, among the number of songwriters who find success in that competition. But if Sweden is as middle of the road, as unadventurous and as uninteresting as we say, then how are they still doing so well? Here's the thing. They might be middle of the road, they might be pop songs, but they're still, for the large part, good songs. And quite frankly, they're staged well as well. I mean, some of them have aged like milk. I'm looking at you, Robin Bengtsson. But in the large majority, they hold up pretty well, even now. With that said, the public is definitely not on board with Sweden in the way that the juries are. If you look at recent years, it's 61 12 points from the juries versus just 7 from the public, which is not the best look. It doesn't really sit right with me, I will admit. But you can't hate the player for playing the game. That's the way the contest is set up. It's a completely legitimate strategy to pursue big scores from the juries, and they're just the best at it. Plenty of other countries are trying to do it. Sweden's jury domination isn't by accident. It's not a coincidence. You know, a large number of juries in Eurovision are radio DJs who play a lot of pop music, pop artists themselves, pop songwriters, pop producers. Of course, those are the kinds of people who are going to really respond to this kind of music. Sweden have perfected the art of sending music that these kinds of jurors enjoy. And it works. You can't blame them for persisting with a strategy that gets them great results every year. Now, there's a completely valid question here, which is that why do those same songwriters not see as much success when they send their songs for another country? And to be honest, I think the reality, at least partly, is that they're not sending their best stuff to other countries. Melodifestivalen is so dominant in Sweden. It totally dominates the charts. It's the most guaranteed way of getting some serious success for an artist for your song. Ultimately, that's how these people pay the bills. Financially, and in terms of singers' careers, it's a better prospect to finish 7th or 8th or 9th in Melodifestivalen than it is to go to Eurovision for San Marino or Azerbaijan and come 20th. While we're here, justice for Adrenalina. I'm not over it, and I never will be. That question about genre diversity is why I saved speaking about Loreen until now. I'm not here to debate whether Tattoo and Euphoria should have won or not, because quite frankly, I think they're both deserving winners. Tattoo might not have been my favourite in 2023, but I would like that argument to stay dead. Please don't start having it in the comments. Instead, I want to talk about Loreen's other song, her entry from 2017, Statement. I remember seeing Statements for the first time because I was sat in my pajamas in my bedroom and this leaked video of a rehearsal from Melfest came up on my timeline. It was just like recorded on a, crappy mobile phone, and it blew me away. I was speechless. I know, given how much I go on, it's hard to believe, but genuinely, I was speechless. Putting aside the fact for a second that the song is a complete banger in its own right, in my opinion, this song is a full expression of Loreen as a person. It is her most authentic, truest self, and I think she really bore everything with this performance. Now, Loreen has talked at length about the meaning of statements, so I'm going to paraphrase her words, the words of her staging director, of her songwriters, to tell you about why this piece of art is so special. The entire song is full of references and expressions of herself at each stage of her life. You see a child in the beginning singing and playing around before suddenly falling silent and grim, and then reappearing on the screen seconds later, having aged 10 years. You see Loreen at different stages of her life. The song is a challenge to power, and it's an expression of rage and of showing what it's like to grow up and realize that the world around you is perhaps not what you thought it was going to be. Most importantly, it's a challenge. It's a call to those in power, those who can change things but choose not to. In my opinion, this is Loreen expressing herself completely freely, and what she produced was stunning. And you know, for me, it's the tiny little details in this performance that I see, and they just fill me with joy even now every time I watch it. Like the little reference to see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil in the second chorus, or the fact that that entire chorus is a homage to a famous image of a old woman hitting a fascist with her handbag. I'm gonna go out on a limb here. Out of Loreen's 4 Melfest entries, I think this is the one that was her masterpiece, that was the one that she felt truly expressed her as a person. And I'm not just saying this for no reason. What do you think she's closing her European tour with? I'll give you a guess. It's not Tattoo or Euphoria. So how did Sweden respond? They sent her to the second chance round, and then she lost to, you know what's coming, a generic man with a generic middle of the road pop song. I'm done. I've had enough. Anton Hagman, you know what you did! Deep breaths. The funny thing was, you could see in Christer Bjorkman, remember Emperor Palpatine? You could see in his eyes when he was brought on stage to confirm that the results could go ahead, he already knew he'd messed up. You could see in his eyes the oh god no moment that he was having. This is the thing I really don't get, and I'm sorry to the Swedish public, but you're getting called out here. Please consider something a little bit more out of the box. The Swedish pop music industry is so strong, the Swedish music industry is so strong, that they could be considerably more ambitious, considerably more risky than they're being right now, and still get great results every year. They know what they're doing right. I just wish they'd take that and do something more exciting. Nothing I can say will express enough how gutted I was that statements not only didn't make it to Eurovision, it didn't even make it to the final of Melodifestivalen, and it lost out to the song equivalent of bread sandwich. That's one whole level below Nothing Burger. What was the point of that whole rant? Well, it's very simple, and it's this. If one of the greatest vocalists and greatest performers in Eurovision history can't convince Sweden to take a risk and do something out of the box, then who will? With that in mind, we have everything we need to answer the question I posed right at the start of the video, which is, why does Sweden rub some fans up the wrong way? Sure, the lack of diversity plays a role. The reliance on juries really does annoy some people, and like I said before, it doesn't sit right with me either. But there's one bigger thing going on here that I haven't talked about yet, and it doesn't just affect Eurovision. It affects everything where there is any kind of competition. Let's call it the Max Verstappen effect. Max Verstappen, totally dominant in F1. For those of you who don't know, he's won almost every single race this season. I'm sure we can all agree that if you're watching something, some kind of competition, and the same person is winning every single time, it gets really boring really fast. The added bit to that is that it breeds resentment. Success breeds resentment. That's entirely natural. We see it in every sport. We see it in every competition. And the reality is, Sweden is partly a victim of that. I feel it myself sometimes. I find myself rooting against Sweden on the basis that it's boring when Sweden does well. It just doesn't excite me in the same way. Is that a rational thought? Probably not. But that's how I feel, and that's how a great many other people feel too. Ultimately, every show has to have a villain. Every single show has to have an antagonist. It's just how it is. It's how it's always been. It's how it will always be in any kind of competition. So my advice to Sweden fans is simple. Enjoy it. It's not going to be this way forever. Firstly, things will change. But secondly, most fans, myself included, would love to have the level of success that you have had over the last few years. And let's be real, you're going to have to learn to get used to people rooting against you from time to time. You're going to have to get used to taking flack. That's just what comes with the territory of supporting the big winners. And remember, that's nothing against Sweden. That is literally just how the game works. Do I find it personally dull that Sweden sends a similar formula every year and does really well? Yes. Do a lot of other Eurovision fans feel the same? Probably. But does it work? You bet it does. The only thing that us or any other country can do is find a way to beat it.
Gabe, you really need to find a name for your viewers. I need a name. Like, what do you call Gabe stands? I need to know. Thank you.